A person would go about starting an urban farm. If there's an established garden or farm in your area or that you know about, it would be good to connect with those folks to get that experience and knowledge. But basically, you measure, you plan out your space, what it is you want to accomplish or go. And if it's a community garden, you really want to get community input. So I would find a block club or a CDC or what's happening in your area and go from there. You know, knock on doors and see if you can get a little volunteer base or some input. But yeah, but I would definitely try to find somebody who knows how to garden or get some books.
What about soil testing? How do you do soil testing?
Soil testing, you gotta go from different spots in the garden. Like the diameter is 30 feet or something like that. And you dig down and you get some soil, and you go another spot and you get some more soil, and you mix it in a bucket and you let it dry out. You put it in a bag and you send it off to be tested. Here in Detroit, we can go through an organization called Greening Up Detroit, because for a small fee to become a community gardener or a family garden, they do it along with the small fee that they charge. So it's a good way, but that's how you test your soil.
Okay. And how could you describe the raised beds and the meaning for them that people see around?
Raised beds, a good way to grow a lot of food in a small space. A raised bed can get you a lot of control in your growing, because you don't have to deal with as many pests. It's good for that, and you yield a lot for such a small space. And if your soil needs remediation, that's a good way to avoid having to spend a lot of time, money, and energy into remediating the soil. You grow on top of it.
How would you build a raised bed?
How would you build a raised bed? Oh, you want to go over here and see a raised bed? Okay. You can get real creative with a raised bed. Okay. Finish that up. And we made our raised beds out of wood, untreated wood. We filled it under the bottom. There's burlap and newspaper. That's what's under there to keep whatever's the weeds and things down. Then we filled it with topsoil and compost. And we plant from there. And the one thing though, your soil depletes. So you have to have soil or compost. We compost. And we replenish our soil with compost. So I've seen raised beds made out of tires, bricks. Repurposing and recycling is very big. I mean, that's the way to go. If you want to go with new wood, if you want to repurpose some wood, that's fine. But you can be really creative with raised beds.
Great. Could you take us over the compost and explain what compost is?
Compost is black gold. That's what compost is. Compost is our waste. That it's layered bio waste. You have grass clippings, you have leaves, and you get a nice mixture of soil in there, and it heats up. You got to keep it moist so that it heats up, and you get this organic compound. It's soil and the worms, and you turn it, and you want to keep it hot, and that's what that feeds your plants really good without the use of a whole lot of extra added chemicals and things like that. Black gold. That's what we call it. No longer dirt, it's soil, black gold compost. And we're kind of depleted on our compost, and we're getting ready to start. You can add wasted brewers, the hops from a brewery, coffee grounds, eggshells, no fried grease, meat, things like that, keep down rats and stuff. But anything, your greens, your green waste, your leaves, your grass clippings, and you got to be careful with your grass clippings. If somebody's using weed and feed and all that stuff on them, you don't want to put them in your compost. You want to keep your compost natural and organic. That's what you want to do. So we're very picky about our waste. And we've been doing very good with our produce thus far, and we hope to continue.
So. Great. Speaking of pros, what's the harvest? Explain harvesting with.
How are you?
Explain harvesting and how's that work? With
harvesting?
Yeah.
Harvesting, isn't that where we get the food and take it to market, cook it, and then at the end of the season when there's very little chance for things to grow, we do a big harvest. We have harvest days, but basically harvesting is the reaping of your benefits of all your hard work.
Is there a certain time that like of the year that's the best, or I mean,
when it's ripe? Things come into they're ripe at different times, and I've learned this. You don't wait until it's all the way ripe. You catch it just before. Like the squash, in the city, people are used to really big vegetables. And the people from down south tell you, no, you want it when it's like this, right before it's more tender, the seeds are smaller, the husks are more tender. So I'm learning a lot as I go. But you harvest when things are ripe. Like the garlic will be the first thing to come. So. Yeah.
I'd say first steps to start any farm is to compost. So start from there. You got to build soil. You know, people think they're going to put a shovel in the ground. In some places you can do that, but around here you got to build compost, and so you can have something to grow in. A lot of this soil is pretty packed clay. You know, Detroit filled dirt. Everywhere we're standing was a house, you know, and they filled the basement with the clay, and so we found pretty early on that it was going to be a lot of kind of raised beds. And so if you look around here, we got like compost piles everywhere, so we're constantly doing that, and then put some seeds in, see what happens. You know, a lot of it's trial and error. You know, I think you can't really teach someone how to garden so much as you got to just love it and have fun and keep doing it and learning and getting better every year. So this is like my 22nd year, and I'm still learning like so many things every year. Every year I try to plant something new, and it's not hard. There's a lot of stuff out there to plant. The resources are all around us, you know, if you just kind of open your eyes. I've been driving by these pallets for years, and just the other day I was like, I'm gonna make a fence out of those, what the hell, you know, like that kind of thing. Or with the paint, or with you know, the stuff that we put into the compost. It's all stuff people are throwing away. There's so little that we paid for even building this house. It was just like, it's all here, you know. I mean, Detroit, you can imagine that for every house that's standing, there's 10 houses gone, or 5 houses within walking distance that you can pull stuff from. But you got to be ready to do that. You got to start, like, sometimes it dawns on you, like, why am I going to go buy fence posts when I just cut down all those trees back there? Like, it's not like built in, you know. You kind of got to realize it. I mean, I've caught myself, like, really, like I was putting a fence at my mom's house, like, really? I just cut down those trees last week, and I could use those for the fence posts. And I don't know, we're just kind of not trained to think that way. But anyway, satisfying, very satisfying.
Same thing with agriculture. A lot of it's changing, and it's like the alphabet, you know. You kind of got to learn the letters and then simple words, and then you build, you know. Like any field, you just, and that's why with kids I get them started with just a pod, just a seed, and then get them growing. Oh, you didn't water it, you didn't put it in the sunlight, and then you move into flats and then outdoor gardens, and kind of build. So if it's a school thing, it's a building process. If it's a neighborhood garden kind of thing, just one little area start, turn it over and try that, and then once you understand that and get that going, then move on to another bed. You know, so farmers, they didn't do 100 acres in one shot. They did a couple acres, cleared that, worked on that, and then they add, you know. So, but then there's a lot of mega big farms, big, you know. You know, if you pick up a hand of soil, there's more microorganisms in that soil than there are people on the planet. There's like 6 billion things of soil. So I mean, you get this, and there's so much living stuff in there, microscopic and bacterial and fungal and worms and nematodes and all these things, and it's a community. And so I think we're just starting to understand it. So if you put fertilizer down there, the plant might grow, but you might kill all the symbiotic organisms. So it's now we're in that frontier, and now we're getting into like bioremediation. Like, these were all houses here, so these are the front yards and the backyards, which was where I'm gardening. But that, I've planted alfalfa, and I'm building that up over the years, dropping compost and leaves and organic to redo the soil. So
What advice would you give to somebody who has just seen the film and they were excited about starting a garden? What would you tell them?
I would say get a support group. But I mean, do it, but people think you're crazy, but once you start doing it, you'll find a lot of crazy people out there. But what I'm into, the urban farming is like prison. Like milking goats, you got to do it twice a day, 7 days a week, and you can't stop or else they dry up. So farming, crops and everything, you've got to be there, which is hard work. We're used to, Americans work 5 days, have our weekends off. So my urban concept is getting people to do it, so that, you know, at the farm now I only milk goats once a week, and now I got volunteers. Even with the neighborhood here, I've got neighbors, and we prune the trees together. It makes it fun, and you're working with people. You got backup. So even if you're in an apartment building or a house, get family members to work together on it, so that, you know, you can have somebody to water. So if you got a meeting or something, so I would say team up is my advice. Team up with somebody and start. You know, you learn by mistakes, so just turn over that soil and get started. That's my advice.
This was tilled out with a rototiller. There's so many weeds in here, so I'm just leveling it, because having it nice and level makes it so much easier when we harvest. And we're trying to use this thing called the Johnny's Greens Harvester, which is like a big salad saw with a bag on it. And so imagine like a lawnmower bag with a giant bread knife. And that's kind of what you get. But if the ground's not level, you'll get chunks of dirt in your bag. So having it level for a bunch of reasons is very important. Well, get it level and let it dry out a little bit. And scorching it with a flame weeder is very important, because any weed seeds on the top will get scorched. And it's like a small flamethrower. And then just rolling the seeds in place. We have this seed roller from Johnny's Seeds. It's called the 6-row seeder, and it gives you like this miniature corn row effect, that all of your greens are placed about a ½ inch from each other, which is important for shading. Again, so the weeds that might be growing don't get sunlight. And it gives you like a chance to maximize your square footage, so you use every square foot that you're growing on. So this, we did transplanting. This was like what happened to survive over the winter. And so it's not like in a uniform row. But we didn't want to throw those plants away, because they're in really good shape after being frozen all winter. Basically like taking all of your waste and letting Mother Nature decompose it and putting it back in your garden, you know? All of this stuff, the carbon, the nitrogen, you know, it has that natural cycle, and we're just doing this on a larger scale, like cycling it back into the garden, but also sterilizing it, because it gets to a temperature of like 160 for about a week or so. And between that and all the worms that are in here, it helps to take care of any pathogens and weed seeds and other junk that you don't want to have in your garden.
What are the steps to composting for somebody who wants to do it for the first time?
Take a mixture of mostly leaves and food scraps, and, you know, pretty much like any organic waste, except for like, you know, cheese and meat and stuff like that. You know, food scraps, we were just talking about coffee grounds, grain from a brewery, and mix them. And there's different proportions that people do, but, you know, as long as it's about like, I would say like 30 to 1 in terms of your carbon, things like leaves and wood chips and stuff like that, to your nitrogens, which are things like grass clippings and other things. You want to have very little nitrogen in it, otherwise it'll start to stink. And the more you flip it and the tighter you break it down, like a lot of this stuff gets sent through a chipper, which accelerates the process. You know, so instead of having it take a year, it'll take 4 months if we have it chipped properly, and if we keep flipping it every week, sometimes even twice a week, it'll break down in about 4 months. And so we're trying to do this on a larger scale because, you know, most people that are serious about their gardens, they have a good compost bin. But we have a lot of people that want to do gardening and community gardening and market gardening and even small-scale farming here. And it'll really help to accelerate the rate in which we're taking over our food system if we have compost on a large scale for everybody. You probably want to have like a 3-sided bin that is aerated and stuff like that, because especially like in densely populated urban areas, you know, people will have issues with it, and the stench that's associated with composting. I guess to keep it from stinking, you have to have like a bin that's aerated, and you have to like flip it about once a week and keep turning it, because if it stops getting air, it'll go anaerobic, which means a different kind of bacteria will come in and start to break down your compost, and that really stinks. So as long as it's getting air, and as long as it gets a little bit of water, and as long as you turn it every week, it'll break down within 6 months. It's mostly leaves. There's some manure from a horse farm in here, some grain from a brewery, a little bit of ash from a wood-burning stove, and a lot of worms. Well, I get it level and let it dry out a little bit, and scorching it with a flame weeder is very important, because any weed seeds on the top will get scorched. And it's like a small flamethrower. And then just rolling the seeds in place. We have this seed roller from Johnny's Seeds. It's called the 6-row seeder, and it gives you like this miniature corn row effect, that all of your greens are placed about a ½ inch from each other, which is important for shading. Again, so the weeds that might be growing don't get sunlight, and it gives you like a chance to maximize your square footage, so you use every square foot that you're growing on. So this, we did transplanting. This was like what happened to survive over the winter, and so it's not like in a uniform row. But we didn't want to throw those plants away, because they're in really good shape after being frozen all winter. But some of the spinach over there that's really dense, and some of the arugula, you can see that it's got this kind of mechanical pattern to it.